Hello, welcome. Welcome back. It's been a while since I've been here, and it's great to be back with Cat Tales. I'm Kathy Palmer, and behind all the cameras and the equipment are Ken Stomsky and Peter Coles. The story I have for you today, because it's October and we all know what's coming, the story I have for you is a wonderful tale called Hobknuckles, and I really hope you enjoy it. It's one of my favorites. Hobknuckles, written by Emily Herman. Every Halloween, Hobknuckles came to our house. He'd peer in the window to catch our attention, and then he would sweep away to weave a web of mystery around the apple trees. We knew better than to go outside when the ghost Hobknuckles was there. Instead, we'd watch safe and warm from the kitchen window, and little tickles of fear would go up our backs while we saw him. Soon, we'd go to bed, and Hobknuckles would drift away. But this year was going to be different. I'm not afraid of Hobknuckles, I told my sisters while we were decorating Halloween cookies at the kitchen table. My little brother Jeff was scraping out the inside of his jack-o'-lantern on the floor. "You're not?" my sister Boo exclaimed. "Well, I'm afraid of Hobknuckles." "Why aren't you afraid, Lee?" asked my other sister Wheezy. "Shh. Hobknuckles isn't real," I said to them. But don't tell Jeff. He's too young to know. I don't want to scare him. Hobknuckles is just Mom or Dad outside in the sheet dancing around." "Oh, well, maybe," said Boo, "but I don't want to go out and find out." "Are you going to do that?" Wheezy asked. "Oh, sure," I said. "I'm going to go out tonight, and I'm going to dance with Hobknuckles the ghost." Well. We finished our cookies, and we spent the rest of the afternoon getting ready for company. We polished apples, and we tied donuts on a string to hang. I could keep my mind on getting ready for Halloween and getting ready for the trick-or-treaters while it was still daylight. But you know, as the light started to fade and evening came in, well, I began to wish that I hadn't really said anything about going outside and dancing with the ghost. Just maybe I wasn't as brave as I thought I was. We got ready and were seated at the table eating dinner. "Would you like more spaghetti, Lee?" my mother asked. "Oh. No, thank you, Ma," I said. "Are you feeling all right?" she said, looking at me carefully, because spaghetti was my favorite food, and usually my mother had to say stop eating. But somehow my tummy was a little fluttery, and I didn't quite feel like eating. "Oh, she's just excited about Halloween," said Wheezy, and she looked at me. But Boo was a little bit worried when she looked at me. And before Ma could say anything else, the doorbell rang. They interrupted our supper, and my brother Jeff raced to the door and opened it to see children dressed as a witch and Superman standing there for trick-or-treat. And still I waited. They bobbed for apples, and they tried catching the swinging donuts in their teeth, and they dunked for pennies in a bowl of flour. More people arrived, and they were dressed as ghosts and monsters and cowboys. And the twins from next door, well, they came over dressed as Raggedy Ann and Andy. My face was smiling as my friends came and played with us. And then they all left with wet hair from dunking for donuts and powdery noses for trying to get the pennies out of the bowl of flour. But all that time, my stomach was waiting for Hobknuckles. Pretty soon, Pa said, "Well, we need more wood for the fire." And he went outside. There, I thought, this is it. Bo looked at me, and I tried to smile back, but still I wasn't quite sure. But I wasn't surprised when a girl dressed as a gypsy looked out the window, and she said, What's that looking at me in the window? What is it? What is it there that I see?" And there Hobknuckles was peering in the window with his face a glowing white, staring at me. He nodded, and then he drifted away and danced in the field with his white robes faintly swaying in the moonlight. I looked, but I couldn't see any feet. But Pa wasn't in the room, so I was sure, well, I thought I was sure. So I edged my way over to the door, and I started to slip out very easily. My sisters, Boo and Wheezy, were watching me. Wheezy came over and she said softly, you don't really have to go out there if you don't want to. It's okay. No, I want to, I said. I will do this. And so I hedged towards the door, and I started towards Hobknuckles, who was spinning around in the apple trees. I was halfway to him in the house when he seemed to look at me with his unblinking eyes, and all of a sudden he swept towards me in one movement. I turned and I stumbled and I raced toward the house. The air was cold and my legs were stiff. I could almost feel his long fingers reaching out to grab me. I looked over my shoulders to see how soon it would be before Hobknuckles was going to catch up with me. But he had stopped coming, and he was standing still. So I stopped running, and I looked at him, and something made me do a little bow. And when I did that, Hobknuckles stopped, and he seemed to look in my direction, and he did a little bow. And then he swung to the left. And I swung to the left. And then he swung to the right. And I swung to the right. And before I knew it, Hobknuckles and I were dancing together among the trees. I would swing left, and he would swoop right. I would dance right, and he would swoop left. Around and around, we danced in the shadows together in the moonlight, Hobknuckles and me. Now he came at me one more time, and he was herding me to the house, and I ran to the door when he was behind me. And I was laughing so hard that I was out of breath, and the door opened, and Pa was standing in the house, holding the door. "Pa?" I said. What are you doing?" And then my mother peeked her head around my father's shoulder. "Ma?" I said. "What are you doing out there?" said my mother. Oh, I thought, Pa's inside, Ma's inside. sighed. Then, who? And I thought for a moment, and I said, I was dancing with Hobknuckles. And then I started shivering because I realized what I had done. Pa hugged me and brought me a cup of hot cocoa, and when my hands were steady enough to hold it and warm me up and stop me from shivering, I took my cocoa over to the window and I looked out. And there outside, dancing on the lawn, was Hobknuckles, staring back at me. He stood very still for a moment, very still, and then he gave a bow, and he swooped to the left, and he swooped to the right, and he danced off again through the apple orchard, and he was gone until next year. Hobknuckles. Sailing far, far away. This story was written by Emily Herman, and Emily Herman comes from the state of Maine. So while you're at home, you might want to Google Maine and find out where it is. Maine is one of the New England states. There are 6 of them. Can you name all of them? Massachusetts is one, Maine is another, so now you need to go and find the other 4 states. She heard this story about Hobknuckles when she was a little girl, and that's why she ended up writing about it as she got older. Are there any stories in your family that your family has shared with you? You might want to write them down and make your own story. If you don't think writing is exactly what you're meant to do, perhaps you want to draw some pictures. Notice that the illustrator, who was named Deborah Cogan Ray, she did all of the pictures in black and white. I'm wondering why you think all of these illustrations were black and white, this being one of my favorites. I noticed that Hobknuckles, who really is the main character in the story, along with the little girl, is not very large in this picture. And I wondered why the illustrator chose to do that. I think she used gray and white because she wanted to give a spooky atmosphere. I also think she wanted to make them smaller so you would get more of a frightening or spooky picture. I like this book because it's a little scary, but not a lot scary. I liked this book because I enjoyed the story of a little girl being very brave and not sure of what she was doing, but keeping in mind that she would still feel very safe with her mother and her father and her friends. So you might want to write your own Halloween story and share it with your family. You might want to draw your own Halloween pictures. You might want to draw your own pictures to go with the story. Remember to look up Maine, look up the New England states, and while you're at it, you want to look up some of the great customs and what started our custom of Halloween. There's more to it besides trick-or-treating. So thank you for listening, and remember, we want you to keep reading. See you later.